Hi friends, it's Miss Burden here for another story time. Today's story is a fiction book. A fiction book means that it is made up in somebody's imagination. We read this book for fun, and it is a very fun book to read. This book is Mrs. McNosh and the Great Big Squash. In this story, boys and girls, we are going to meet a character, Mrs. McNosh. And she works in her garden, and she continues working in her garden, and something strange starts to happen. And then at the very end, there's a big surprise. So we are going to read this book today, and we are going to try to figure out who the main character is and what the setting is. Now, this is a big clue as to who the main character is. I see her on the front cover, and her name is in the title, Mrs. McNosh, and there she is. So that's a big clue as to who my main character is going to be. Now, I want to read my story to confirm that prediction, but that's a pretty good start. Now, I have my anchor chart here, boys and girls, that we've been working on. We have stories, have characters, and a setting. And our books that we have read have been Little Quack, David Gets in Trouble, and now we're going to read Mrs. McNosh and the Great Big Squash today. You can see, boys and girls, that we have identified main characters and we have identified the setting. Now, the setting has two different parts. Let's do our whole brain technique. The setting is where and when the story takes place. So we need to see where it happens, the place, and when it happens. This is the time of day. So when we're talking about setting, I want to know where she's at and what time of day it is. All right, boys and girls, let's get started with our book. Mrs. McNosh and the Great Big Squash, written by Sarah Weeks. Pictures, this means she's the illustrator, is by Nadine Bernard Westcott. Here's the title page, Mrs. McNosh and the Great Big Squash. The first day of spring, Mrs. Nellie McNosh went out to her garden and planted a squash. You can see the seeds going into the ground, and she has a little stick here that says squash. She pushed the seed in with the tip of her toe, and the minute she did it, it started to grow. So boys and girls, let's take a second. Let's think about who we see as the character. I see Mrs. McNosh. Let's think about the setting. Where is she? I want you to think about that for a second. Where is Mrs. McNosh? Yeah, she's in a garden. And boys and girls, what time of day does it look like? It doesn't look dark outside, so I don't think it's nighttime. I think it's daytime. Even though I don't see a sun, it isn't dark, so I know it's daytime. Now, something fun about this book is that I hear a lot of rhyming words. Toe and grow. Listen as you hear the book and see if you can hear rhyming words. At first, it was round and as big as a head. In fact, it looked just like the paper boy Fred. Here's the squash. Here's the paper boy. Do you think they look the same? Then it turned yellow and bumpy and fat. It rolled from the garden and flattened the cat. Uh-oh. Boys and girls, I hear a word in here that helps me identify my setting. It rolled from the garden. The garden is where the story is happening. It knocked over trash cans and ran over toes. It twisted the sprinkler and plugged up the hose. It crashed through the clothesline and smashed through the fence, scaring the pants off two elderly gents. Oh my goodness, here they are, they're running away without their pants. See, I told you this was a fun book to read. Poor Nellie was worried. She said, "Oh my gosh, there's got to be some way to slow down this squash." She slapped it and scolded it, pinched it and kicked it, and then she took hold of its stem and she picked it. So here it is. This is the stem that goes to the ground, and here's the stem to the squash. So she picked it, boys and girls, which means she broke the stem away from the ground. So, boys and girls, I want you to think, if she picked the squash, is it going to continue to grow now? Is it getting its nutrients from the ground anymore? It would go here and then, oh, it can't get to the squash, so I don't think it's going to continue to grow. Now what do I do? Wondered Mrs. McNosh. I've got to find something to do with this squash. There isn't a place in the world it will fit. It's as big as a house. Wait, said Nellie. That's it. What is Mrs. McNosh going to do? Boys and girls, what do you think she's going to do with that great big squash? And so by the light of a big yellow moon, oh, let's wait. Now there's a moon outside. Boys and girls, how did my setting change? Yes, it was daytime, and now it has turned to nighttime. And so by the light of a big yellow moon, she scooped and she scraped with a long-handled spoon. And when the sun rose, where was Mrs. McNosh? Curled up, sound asleep in her big yellow squash. So Mrs. McNosh has turned her great big squash into her house. Very interesting. All right, boys and girls, let's get our anchor chart again so we can talk through this. Now, the first thing I want to do is talk about my character. So who was the main character of Mrs. McNosh and the Great Big Squash? Yes, it was Mrs. McNosh. So I will need to draw Mrs. McNosh right here. And then let's talk about the setting. Where did the story happen? Where was she? Yeah, she was in the garden. So she was in the garden, and boys and girls, was it daytime or was it nighttime? It was both. It started in the daytime and then it went to the nighttime. So I'm going to draw my sun first and then my moon down here to remind me it was daytime and it went to nighttime. All right, boys and girls, I'm going to finish my anchor chart and I will post a picture for you to see. I will see you next time. Bye.